How many hobbies do you have? And do you think hobbies are important? An awful lot of people these days think that hobbies aren't important at all, but I'm actually going to talk to you today about why I think hobbies are really, really important. So my name is Mandie Cran and welcome to my moment of reflection. And I've been doing these for about 5 years now. My aim really with them is to help you take a bit of a step back from your busy lives and help you see the world in a slightly different perspective. Because so often we stay on that rut in life, don't we? And sometimes just taking a step out of the rut can have a huge difference in the way that you see things. Please like and share as we go through, and especially if you think there's somebody this will particularly help, then please forward it on to them. So the quote for this week is, "Always find time for the things that make you feel happy to be alive." Now, I grew up on a small island, 3 miles by 1.5, so it was very small, and therefore there was very little things to do on it. In the summer it was fine because you could sail, climb up and down the cliffs, go swimming on the beach comb, ride a bike and so on. But in the winter it was completely different. There was nothing and nowhere to go. We had one small village hall, which occasionally had plays and that sort of thing on. But otherwise there was nothing. There was no real shops, tiny bakers, tiny butchers and a few tourist shops. But nothing like you have on the mainland. And so in the winter you really had to find something to occupy yourself with. And so everybody on the island had hobbies in one way, shape or form, because an awful lot of things you couldn't buy, even on the next island, and to import from the UK was actually really expensive. So we all used to make do and mend, and we all used to make things in all sorts of different ways, which is why I grew up having so many hobbies. But today I want to talk about 3 categories of hobby, if you like, and just talk to you about why they're so important. So the first one is those which are creative. So things like sewing, for example, or pottery, metalwork, jewellery making, that sort of thing. And I loved sewing. As I say, we grew up on a small island, and the house we lived in had been a converted cow byre, so it was a very long old stone cottage. It had in the roof 4 small rooms, and so we all had our own hobby room. So my father had his photography dark room, my mother had a sewing room, my brother had a Hornby train set, and I had a Lego train set in my hobby room. And we would escape up to there if any other members of the family were starting to get a little bit too much at any point. So it was a really good escape in that sense. But one of the things I grew up with doing lots of was sewing. And my mother made virtually everything around the house because you couldn't get things on the island, you certainly couldn't buy curtains. So I grew up around material and sewing all the time. And there's many benefits to sewing. Firstly, it is a really great way to just escape from the world, lose yourself in a project for a couple of hours and create something. And for me, being a creative person, I find that so satisfying. But the other thing is it saves you a lot of money. Over the years, we've moved many, many times. And at one point, we moved 4 times in 5 years. And just think of all those curtains that I had to change every single time we moved, sometimes 9 months at a go. And if I'd had to buy new curtains for every single window in every single new house we moved into, it would have cost us a fortune. But by taking what we had, adapting it, or perhaps buying the material cheaply in a shop, I knew we were going to be there in 9 months, there's no point spending lots of money on it anyway, then I saved a massive amount of money. So around the house I made all the curtains, I made the cushions, I made lots of chair covers, lots of things for the girls in terms of clothes, not so much clothes, more things like costumes or things for plays or fancy dress outfits. Mending their clothes even has saved me an awful lot of money. And over the years things have gone round again and again and again. So something that started as dress then became a skirt, then became a costume for a play, then it became a bag for a prop or something for a play, and then at the end of the day, when it's past its best life, it becomes something in a patchwork quilt. And so it's a great way to recycle, actually, and an awful lot of things would go round again and again and again. And I still have some material up in the attic that I got from my mother many, many years ago that I haven't used yet. But there'll come a day when it becomes, exactly what I need. And I've learnt not to throw these things away, because as soon as I throw it away, I will need it for a particular project. So it's soothing, it saves you money, and also it's a great way to recycle. And of course, there's so many forms of sewing out there that you can do, which is really, really rewarding. I started a project in 1989 in Germany when I was out there, and I recovered a chair. It's Florentine embroidery, so it takes quite a lot of work. Anyway, I finally finished that project of 8 chairs 3 months ago. Now, I've done other things in the meantime, but I now look in the dining room and I see these wonderfully embroidered dining room chairs, and it just feels such a wonderful sense of satisfaction. And you certainly could not paid me the amount of money for those chairs that it's taken. You certainly couldn't buy them. It simply wouldn't be worth it. But for me, it has been worth it. So something creative, for me, sewing is a fantastic hobby. The second type of hobby, which requires really good hand-eye coordination, and I'm thinking of things like painting, like model making. I used to make model ships when I was a child. I know. I used to do so many things. But the thing about hand-eye coordination is that it's a skill that if you don't practice a lot, you lose as you get older. And I'm sure we've all seen older people starting to lose that hand-eye coordination as their faculties start to go in older age. And I firmly believe that if you practice and do lots of hand-eye coordination type stuff as late as you possibly can, then it will keep it going and keep it sound much longer, because you're practicing it all the time. It's like anything, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's really important for hand-eye coordination. Again, it's really relaxing. I could go into my hobby room and I was making a model of the Cutty Sark at the time when I was about 14, and I could lose myself for hours, absolutely hours, on my model, and suddenly I realised a day had gone by and I hadn't spoken to anybody. It had just been so relaxing and soothing, completely in the moment, completely unbothered by any other troubles outside my hobby room. And of course, it keeps your brain active. You're constantly having to think about which piece goes next, what colour to use if you're painting. There's a whole process involved in all sorts of these types of hobby. So I do really believe that whole hand-eye coordination and keeping the brain active and focused is really, really important. Especially we're living so much longer. Most people living into 90s and 100s now, and we need to keep that brain active as long as we possibly can. And the third type of hobby is one which takes you outdoors. Now, you'll know that I'm a great outdoors fan. I love being outdoors. We went to London last night to see a show. We were crammed up in the tube and the train and sweltering at 30 degrees with about 1,000 other people. And both my daughter and I just looked at us and said, we need to get back out in the countryside, which we are today, thankfully. But the thing about being outdoors is it gives you fresh air, so it's healthy for you. You get vitamin D from the sun, which is very important, which you wouldn't get if you go to the gym. Good though a gym is. But also things outdoors tend to be free. And yes, I belong to a gym, but actually when I can, I'm outdoors on my bike, walking the dog, sailing, hill walking, that sort of thing. Because I work much more me. But the other thing about being outdoors is there's something about nature which is really relaxing and soothing. And there's a wonderful quote by a Chinese philosopher from thousands of years ago that said, "Nature does not rush, yet everything is accomplished." And I think that's a wonderful quote, because when you're in nature, it's so relaxing and soothing, and yet it seems to be going nowhere, and yet everything happens absolutely at the right time in the seasons. It's really quite extraordinary. And that soothing and sort of calming, the slight breeze through the trees, rustling the leaves slightly in the shade, and hearing the animals scutter about and hear the bird song, I find really soothing and relaxing. And I think if you're living in a busy city and a busy 9-to-5 job, then getting out into nature, even into the park for a short time, is really important. And it was interesting yesterday in London, in St James's Park, just how many people there were outside sitting under the trees, just relaxing and chilling. It was wonderful to see. So I really urge you to do something outside, no matter whether it's cycling, swimming, hill walking, anything like that. You'll find it's really good for you. So you can see that there's a theme through those hobbies, which I hope you picked up, which was it's all about being soothing, relaxing, calming, taking a step out of your really busy lives and your busy day-to-day job and family, whatever else is going on. And a lot of that can be quite stressful. But by having a hobby, it can take you out of that for a moment, engage you in something which is completely different from anything else you might be doing, and gives you time for yourself. And especially as women, we are terrible at giving ourselves time. We always think we have to look after everybody else first, and actually it's really important that we look after ourselves too. So think about what hobby you have that perhaps you've given up and not done for a bit that you would take up again, or think about maybe if you've never had a hobby, think what would I really love to do. And it has to be something you can completely lose yourself and completely enjoy. It doesn't matter what the results are, it doesn't matter how terrible they are, the important thing is you enjoy doing it. So I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If we haven't met yet, then my name is Mandie Cran, and people come to me when they realise that they need to make changes in their life if they want to have better health and quality family time in the years ahead. So if that sounds like you, then get in touch because I might be able to help. So please join me next week live at 10 o'clock on Facebook on the Buzz group Be More, and I'm going to be talking about being angry. So I look forward to seeing you all next week at 10 o'clock, and have a great week.